This is Leafs Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill.
Now we've got a fight started here right off the bat with Rosehill.
30 minutes of live, nonstop Leafs talk starts now.
And just like that, we're back in the mix. Heavy stomachs, a bit of a food coma, but we're back. It's Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill with you for the Tuesday edition of Leafs Morning Take. What's happening, Rosie?
How are you, dude? Good to be back. Yeah, had a good Christmas time. Ate too much, drank too much, and yeah, that's what it's all about.
It's always the case where it's like a snap of the fingers and boom, the holidays are over, right? Like in the moment, you never really cherish it. And then like 2 days later, like wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, it's over.
Yeah, it's kind of I remember that as a kid, like it's like a month-long build-up for this thing, right? And then after Christmas morning, it's kind of almost sad when you're cleaning everything up and chucking everything in the recycling and it's over. But I don't know, I think at this age you get used to her, but you just got to keep the festivities going into the new year.
You talk about festivities. The World Juniors kicked off last night, and what a surprising start for Team Canada. What are some of your best junior memories? I wanted to talk about a one team specifically, the Olds Grizzlies, the AJHL. What do you remember about junior, Rosie?
What do I remember about junior? It was, it was different, man. I mean, we had a tough team and we had a cool coach that wanted us he would way rather pull back on the reins than crack the whip, so we ran around pretty hard and we had like 3 sets of brothers on the team. We had a good mixture of everybody and we were tough as hell. We didn't really have a designated heavy necessarily, but we had tons of guys that could mix it up and the league was tough that time of, that time in history. And you go up north and there'd be some big boys up there. And yeah, just lots of, just kind of the Wild West a little bit. It seems like looking back now, when you watch the games now, it's like, man, things have changed a lot. But I remember it being intense and tough and all the boys just wanting to get rowdy.
Yeah, that's a gritty name to begin with. The Olds Grizzlies. Were you guys a powerhouse in the AJHL?
No, not really. I mean, I think we went to the South Final when we were there, and since then they haven't done really well. But it's been tough, that league. Brooks has come out really big, spending lots of money, and it's kind of hard to recruit. And I think our barn, we could use a new rink, which would help with recruiting. But we were always in the mix coming up through, but we only won the one Centennial Cup there in about '94. So it'd be nice to reestablish the powerhouse in Olds, Alberta.
Start a GoFundMe account maybe, but it's always great to get players' perspective and a throwback to the junior days. Like the World Juniors, were they ever a thing when you were playing, like in terms of like, do players keep in mind the World Juniors when some of their teammates are playing or some people they know?
Yeah, I think so. If you know somebody or whatever, have a reason.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, usually if you're not playing in it or whatever, you're kind of shutting the lights off on the hockey mode for a couple of days if you're lucky, and you can go home or see some family and just unplug from the hockey. And I think by all means you'd have it on in the background kind of thing, but as far as in following it intensely, if you don't necessarily have a good buddy on the team or anything, it's you're kind of in shutdown mode from hockey, because that's the only break you're going to get besides maybe a couple at All-Star break.
Felt like shutdown mode yesterday for Team Canada. That was a sloppy game to kick off the World Junior, but it happens. Remember to subscribe, tap that like button, leave us a review wherever you're checking us out. Don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com for the very latest in all things Toronto Maple Leafs. Thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns, again, make sure to drop us a line in the chat down below. We'll get to that here on YouTube as the Maple Leafs get set to face the St. Louis Blues. Let's get over the boards. Well, you see on your screen, Rosie, back to business. A 4-day holiday hiatus done just like that, and they start a 3-game road trip to end 2022 in St. Louis today. What do you make of that one?
Yeah, it should be good. I always find it interesting to see how people respond after the break. It's an opportunity to either recharge your batteries and kind of reset the brain. And it's also a time to, have a turkey coma and kind of forget that you're supposed to be back in the NHL here tonight. And it can go both ways. Some teams can really find some new vigor and figure out, some of their problems, get that little rest and kind of hit the reset button. And I think some teams, probably teams just like St. Louis Blues, are looking to kind of reestablish themselves as, a high-end hockey team in the league, and they'll come out of the break that way. And then other teams can kind of come off sluggish and forget that you got to turn that brake brain off a little bit too, and they can come out pretty slow and get hauled on in the first couple of games. So it'll be interesting, but I do know that, if the records show up, the Leafs are quite favored in this game. But if it's kind of one of those ones that could easily be a sleeper because you're coming off that break that you're not used to, and it's kind of hard to hit that reset button and actually come out firing. But I think it'll be interesting to see. It might be a little tighter game than people are thinking it will be.
And the Blues a bit banged up. They announced earlier today, by the way, Torrey Krug, who ran that Bruins power play for so many years, has really struggled to meet expectations in St. Louis. Will be out for the next 6 weeks, so you won't see him tonight. I know Kyrie's been missing some time as well. It's just been a work in progress for the St. Louis Blues. They've been playing catch up all season long, but I think you're so right. From the Maple Leafs perspective, I wondered if they wanted the break to come because they're feeling so good about life. But certainly for some teams, Rosie, it has to feel like a new lease on life. You get reinvigorated, rejuvenated. You get to see your family, hang out with your pets, and then come back fresh with a fresh batch of games here.
Yeah, I think it's best for teams that are not rolling, that are struggling and finding a tough time having consistency, maybe injury problems, a bunch of negativity around the locker room and in the meetings. And it's good just to get the hell away. Everyone kind of reset, put things in perspective, and then come back kind of ready to go after the break. And then on the flip side, a team that's rolling hard, you just want to make sure that you can regain that momentum after the break and pick up where you left off, because you don't want something that's supposed to be beneficial like a break to throw something in your spokes and be able to throw you off track. So I think it'll be a test for both teams here tonight.
As a former fighter in the NHL, what is your breakdown, your analysis on Jordan Binnington and his act over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I've been looking at that online a little bit. He's been doing that for quite a few years, and it's just like, it's interesting. It's very uncharacteristic for a goalie to be like that. You can only think of a handful of them throughout, the years who would kind of do anything physical or do anything outside of their own little bubble with the blinders on, is how kind of goalies usually operate. And then he's just all over the place, mask off, bumping guys, chirping nets, hitting guys. And I mean, I think we mentioned it before, like when a guy like Chief Craig Berube is telling his own goalie just to shut up and quit dicking around, obviously he's kind of gone over the line. And it just seems to me like the act has gotten old to everyone, and no one's like loving it. No one's praising it. No one's saying, yeah, this is what we need. It's kind of just this weird distraction that has probably cost them more than anything, with him taking penalties and getting other guys involved. So I don't know. I find it interesting and funny to watch, and I hope he starts doing stupid shit tonight. But other than that, if he was on my team, I'd probably be like Chief and be like, can you just stop the puck and quit with this sideshow,
Yeah, because it's so interesting. Like, this guy won a Stanley Cup, so you sort of feel like you have to give him leash that says, hey, he's done this before. He's turned his act in gear and won some games for us. But then on the contrary, it's been a couple of years since he's been anywhere remotely close to that guy who won the Stanley Cup a couple of years ago. And you start to wonder if this is becoming a bigger story than it needs to, right, inside that locker room. And, if it's like a side act or a sideshow when it comes to this team, if you're like a player in that locker room, whether you're Ryan O'Reilly, the captain, which we'll get to in mere moment, certainly in that conversation, or the head coach has already come out and said something, you have to think Craig Berube's not the first person to say something, right?
You kind of think so. I mean, usually you don't really tell goalies what to do too often. They just do their thing, and you leave them alone and let them get prepared. So it's always been this thing like, maybe don't touch his stick, or maybe he doesn't like to get whacked on the pads or hit both pads instead of just one because it feels uneven, and they're always doing something. You don't want to throw him off. So for him to do that, it might be a little bit tougher to say something. Like you said, he just won a Stanley Cup here in the last handful of years. So there is that respect factor, but you got to think that those guys, I mean, lots of guys on that team won the Stanley Cup with them. And like you say, Ryan O'Reilly being the captain, he'd be like, hey, like, we probably don't need that stuff, man. Like, I think we're starting to get off track. Like, you're too good of a goalie to get distracted by outside shit. Maybe you could try. But again, I don't know what kind of guy Binnington is and how he'd respond to that. But definitely interesting based on his actions out there. He must have some kind of a personality.
Dude, he's actually a good dude. Like, weirdly enough, I was in Scottsdale in June for a bachelor party, and I was out at the club or the bar or whatever in Scottsdale. An amazing time, by the way. And I bumped into Binnington. He was at a buddy's bachelor party, and like, I didn't know him very well, but I'd shot the shit with him before, so we started chatting. And I did bring it up. Like, we were laughing about it. I'm like, dude, you ever gonna fucking dance with somebody? And he's like, oh yeah. Like, I know he was just kidding. But I just, it's important to note that like he does have a personality. And I think more than most people, having been and played professional hockey, goalies are fucking weird to begin with. But I just think it's so hilarious how this sort of saga has taken on a life of its own the last couple of years, because every time he seems to be tough, 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 it gets time to dance and he doesn't dance, Rosie.
Yeah, it seems like he likes to just throw the little shot when no one's paying attention. No one would certainly expect it from a goalie after the intermission when you're kind of crossing paths and, bump into someone that way and then wait till the linesman jump in and everything else. But I mean, I think I don't know if it would do him better or not to actually fight somebody out there. Like, it would certainly back up some of his stuff, but I think that would just give even more reason for their team to be like, what the fuck are you doing out there? Like, why? We have 20 skaters here who can, mix it up or do something like that. We don't need our star goalie doing it, but for whatever reason, he likes to get involved in that. Maybe it keeps him awake or gets him going. I don't know, but you got to think he's going to tone it down after he's getting so much attention for it.
Yeah, to me, it brings shades of Ronnie Hextall back in the day, but Hextall was not afraid to drop the gloves. But certainly we'll see on the Binnington front. There's got to be a moment in time where somebody's like, fuck this, let's go. And he's going to fight whether he likes it or not. By the way, Binnington's from Richmond Hill, Ontario. 2-2-0, 4.41, 8-8-1 against the Leafs. Shoot the fucking puck tonight, right, Rosie?
Wow, yeah, those aren't the greatest numbers in the world. And I don't always like the numbers of like, this is how he is against this franchise in the last 3 years. It's like, who gives a shit what a number were 3 years ago? What has he done lately? And so I always take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, it doesn't look like he's a big fan of playing against the Buds based on those numbers.
Well, I can tell you those numbers are across the board this season, last season. So that backs up my expectation for this game tonight. Not to spoil my PointsBet Canada bet of the day, by the way. Special teams, it's going to be a big-time factor. So no Sandin, presumably no Riley, no choice with the power play. I haven't asked you this before, and they've had this going for the last couple of weeks. What do you think of that 5-forward power play unit with Matthews, Marner, Nylander, JT, and Bunting? Of course, right now they have no choice unless you want to put Timmins out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're kind of hamstrung into the situation to have to use it. I don't love it. I would feel much better about it, obviously, if we could put Riley on the back end and just have that defensive presence, just an understanding of how to work that blue line, how to go back for pucks, how to kind of win battles in certain positions that those forwards aren't used to being in. But they're good enough hockey players, obviously, and I think their defensive side of the puck has been a lot cleaner this year. So I have less of a problem with it right now than I may have, say, last year, when they tended to get sloppy and kind of turn their brain off to defense and just be pure offense. And I mean, already this year, though, we've seen so many odd man rushes against for our power play units that, I mean, the last thing you want when you're supposed to be, getting an opportunity to score a goal and at least to gain a lot of momentum on a 2-minute power play, and you're giving up like multiple odd man rushes, obviously you're doing something wrong. So if you start to see that, I'm going to hate it. But as for right now, I mean, they're kind of hamstrung into that position to have to put all those guys in the back end and just go with a 5-man forward power play. And, hopefully it pays off where you got so much offense, you're just overwhelming them in their zone and you can bury some goals.
Unsurprisingly, the numbers have not been pretty since Morgan Riley went down on November 21st. They actually ranked 25th to 32 in the NHL in the power play, 8 for 45. They're 2 for the past 11, and there's a reason why I bring this up, because you look at St. Louis, they're dreadful on the PK, Rosie. 29 of 32 in the NHL, 70.7%. So suffice it to say, I think special teams will be a big-time telltale sign in this hockey game. If the Leafs can win that, they're probably walking out of St. Louis with 2 points tonight.
Yeah, it would be nice to get that power play going and, bump those numbers up a little bit based on the fact that you're playing against one of the worst PKs in the league. So take advantage. It's a good time to get the boys going again, figure something out before Riley comes back, and make the most of it. Because like you said, those aren't the best numbers on the PK there for the Blues.
Let's start the engines, Rosie. Ryan O'Reilly, the captain of the St. Louis Blues. We know the March 3rd trade deadline is fast approaching. I want to ask you this question. Should the Leafs go all in on Ryan O'Reilly, assuming he becomes available via trade here?
I say no. Don't go all in on Ryan O'Reilly. I mean, he's obviously a solid player. You look at him. I mean, that minus 26, is that a real number at Christmas right now? But if you just went up to a child or a 10-year-old and said, hey, does Ryan O'Reilly, should we get him on the Maple Leafs? He'd go, oh, yeah, awesome. But it's like, what are you giving up for him? I mean, we know what this team is doing right now, and you're going to have to break that up to insert Ryan O'Reilly. What if it doesn't work? What if he doesn't want to be in Toronto? What if, he messes up the chemistry of it? What if there's a battle for leadership in the locker room? Like, it's a big deal to pull a huge piece of a puzzle out and insert another one. And obviously the biggest question to me is, what do you give up to get Ryan O'Reilly? And, if you can make some deal where you're like, wow, I can't say no to this, but then by all means, right, you got to assume that you're making your team better with him. But as far as going all in and like betting the farm and taking this big chance, I say no, man. This team's looking really well-rounded, and you're going to have to take some pieces out of that to add him. And you might just overload one side of the team and leave something else hanging, where it's going to cost you in the playoffs. And all of a sudden that's not a good move. And you've just gotten rid of a whole ton of people. And now people aren't loving Riles on the Maple Leafs. Like, that thing can go south just as fast. So I like to kind of go against the grain and say, maybe not, especially if you have to go all in, like you say.
Yeah, but there has to be an element of risk attached to this, right? You look at other teams that have made some big time trades in the last couple of years, and I think you look at the resume and the body of work and the fact that they have a lame duck GM and Kyle Dubas, and suggest, hey, he could do something a bit more substantial in years past. Like, to me, this has the odor, if you will, of like the conundrum a couple of years ago: Nick Foligno or Taylor Hall? Is it Ryan O'Reilly or Frankie Vetrano? Like, I know it's an unfair comparison, but I think that's what the Leafs are dealing with, where I think you have to weigh the pros and cons of saying a Ryan O'Reilly or a Bo Horvat. Like, I think no price tag, in my opinion at least, should be too high for this team. I was going to ask you, Nick Robertson, would he be on the table? Would your first-round pick be on the table? What lengths would you be willing to go to tinker with this roster? I think you're pretty profound in saying you wouldn't tinker very much, right?
Not too hard. And I mean, I would like to, don't get me wrong, I'd like to add that piece to the puzzle, but I just know that, what the Blues are going to do to give up their captain and big part of their Stanley Cup winning club there a couple of years ago. It's not going to be cheap. And if you are just making a full-on pedal down run for it this year, then maybe you do look at a Robertson and say, you know what, I think we can get away with doing this. And it's just all about justification. Like, can I justify this? Are we getting better? And if it's something that you can't say no to, and you don't feel like you're getting taken advantage of, and you think you're getting the best side of the deal, then the GM will probably pull the trigger. But I feel like I live a little bit more like in the locker room land, where it's just like, this is our team.
Yeah.
If something happens, bring it in and we'll deal with it then. But as of right now, like, I'm not looking at trades. I'm looking at what we have and how well they're operating and where we can get better. And then it seems like, I think you are always like interested in the trades and watching the free agency and what pieces could move around. And obviously that's valuable too. But my mind automatically goes to like, let's keep what we have and make the best of this, because this is good. And we don't want to break this apart to add one piece and have it blow up in our face. But inevitably, if something comes across the table it's too good to say no to, I don't think anybody would.
Sorry to break it to you. If this team doesn't do anything substantial, there's going to be a shit fuck of change. I could tell you that. But I want to get your perspective too. And you love that when I give those opinions, eh? But like,
Yeah.
I was going to ask, like, you ever been on a team where your GM makes a trade and everybody in the room's like, wow, that's weird. Like, I know, your time with Toronto is a bit different, certainly with Philadelphia, but do you recall a time in the NHL where you guys looked around and said, I'm not crazy about that?
I can't think of one offhand. In other times, like, you get a player on the team, maybe I'm trying to think, if I'm not going to say any names, but you get a guy on the team and you're like, wow, this guy's coming in. Like, why did we do that kind of thing? Or else I heard this guy's a terrible guy and we got him for cheap because he's a cancer in the locker room. What are they doing? Do they not know that? And a couple of those things might go around. That's if a guy's got kind of a bad reputation and is bouncing around. But I mean, I do remember when Dion Phaneuf got traded to, Toronto, everyone was like, whoa, that's kind of a big deal, right? He came into the locker room first day and he was just chatty and kind of knew everybody already. He'd probably done his homework a little bit and turned some tunes on and just started getting it going, and was just, he just wanted to really insert himself into the lineup and kind of create that environment right off the bat. And it ended up being a good thing. And I think he was a good player for the Leafs for quite a while. So Not many stories of where you just can't believe what happened. Usually the GM isn't that out of touch on what the team needs, but it's always different when you mix it up, man, especially when there's a couple new guys come into the locker room. It's a total reset as far as how things operate in the locker room and everything else. So there's a bit of risk like that if you are firing, in a good way already and before you make that trade.
Believe it or not, I wasn't as big a Phaneuf hater as you probably could have thought when he came over from Calgary to the Maple Leafs, but I couldn't get over people were just stroking this guy off for his DJ work in the room. Like, that's all everybody talked about for 3 weeks, how he came in the room, he turned on the boom bops, he played his music. Like, was there any specialty to the music he played that made him so amazing?
No, that was weird because it's funny because I even said it because I think I remember that, but I just remember, like, what's this guy going to be like? And he didn't come on too strong, which he can do. He can come on too strong. And he didn't, but he wasn't just, he didn't, he wasn't just riding the quiet train into, chilling out and feeling everybody out. He came in and like said, I'm here, let's get this done, I'm on board. And Berkey was just loving him. And I think it was Berkey that said he turned on the music and then everyone just started thinking that was like the greatest thing, like big fucking deal. But I think that's just in my head from hearing that so many times from the media too.
No, it's exactly what I'm saying. Like, that's all I recall from that time frame when they picked up Dion Phaneuf. We knew he was captain because he turned the music on when he walked into the room. Like, I know guys who are like depth players in the league that would do that now, you know?
Yeah, probably. Some rookie would probably walk up and grab it and start cranking some Swedish techno or something because things have changed in the locker room from what I hear. But no, it's good for him to come in and just establish himself as a guy, and he was a big presence in the locker room, and I think he started that right off the bat. And I think the GMs and the powers that be at the time really loved that.
Yeah, they still do. We got to get Phaneuf on the show, by the way. So track him down. We're going to get him on. We're going to get his thoughts on all this moving forward during this Leaf season as they get set for the unofficial second half here tonight against the St. Louis Blues, which leads us to the wrap-up. It's brought to you by our friends at PointsBet Canada. All right, Rosie, fresh new slate for this week. As I hinted earlier, I like the over 6 in this game between the Leafs and the Blues. They're looking at around minus 115 in value right now on PointsBet Canada. They're coming off a holiday break. I mentioned Binnington's numbers, 2-2-0, 4-4-1, 881 in his career in 4 appearances against the Maple Leafs. And the last 3 meetings between Toronto and St. Louis have all hit the over. So I'm feeling the over tonight. Do you like that play or not really?
I do, especially based on everything you just said. I thought it would be about 6.5, just with the firepower and the bad PK and Binnington's numbers would make it seem like 6.5. But I mean, you can even get a push here. So I don't mind it. It's a good bet. Minus 10 is a good value too. So you seem to be on top of things with what's going on. You go a lot deeper than me. I just go gut feelings. So I always like it when my gut feeling gets reinforced by a bunch of numbers. So I'm liking that bet a lot right now.
I know some books have it at 6.5, by the way. So I saw it at 6 on PointsBet Canada. I pounced. So minus 110 for the over between the Leafs and the Blues. You mentioned that the game has changed quite a bit. I'm curious to get your thoughts watching the World Junior last night. I know it was a big topic of conversation. It was 1-0 Canada. But they tried the Michigan move not once, but twice in the first period. If that happened in your room or in your practice or during a game, how would you guys react back in the day? I understand it's a different era, though.
Yeah, it's funny, man. It's like when you get to be one of those skill guys who is just like doing something kind of outrageous. It's weird. Hockey's got a culture of like, don't fuck around and have respect and know your role and all that kind of stuff. So, it would be a rookie or some young hotshot coming out of junior or some shit would try that thing. And all the old guys would be like, what are you doing? But I think the biggest thing when guys are pulling that kind of stuff, like same with between the legs and doing all that kind of stuff, like if you can make it work, good on you. But if you keep trying it and it doesn't work, the coaches and everyone else is going to lose their freaking mind saying this isn't fucking roller hockey. If you want to go play shinny, there's some ice down the road, but put that shit away and start playing our system and using your teammates and blah, blah, blah. So it would be a little bit of both, but these guys these days, it is also a different era, but the shit they can do with that puck, like these sticks and the way they handle that thing. And it just seems like it's a lighter puck for these kids. A kid's 160 pounds and he is zinging that puck around like like nothing. It's really impressive. They got the big curves on their stick and they know how to freaking use them. So I don't hate it. It is nice when it works out, and I do like seeing highlight reel goals, but it is
Yeah.
annoying when, you keep beating a dead horse with some fancy bullshit move that's not working.
Is it conducive to winning is my question. And we saw Euro Spacek's kid yesterday combat the Michigan move by slashing the stick, which I thought was really, really impressive. And I'm curious to see how it evolves in the next couple of years. Tim writes in, the juniors look disjointed, not playing together yet. You were bang on with that assessment. And who's in the twine tonight, guys? I believe we don't have an update on that just yet. Don't forget, it's Central Time for that game. But the expectation, at least for me, that it's Matt Murray and Jordan Binnington. Lamnot writes in, get a defenseman, not another forward. Where are you in that conversation? I know we talked a bit about Ryan O'Reilly, but I think if you're opposed with a defenseman or forward, you're only allowed to get one between now and the deadline. What are you after, Rosie?
Well, I have said defenseman. I mean, someone to complement, Morgan Riley on there. If you start leaning on some of these guys too much, I think it may just one of those premier big boy defensemen who can just absolutely lock it down and can control the play out there. I feel like we don't have enough of those on the back end by any stretch. They're doing amazing right now. They're playing well together. They look really solid, but I just don't. I think it would be great to just add another big boy, a big chip on the back end, and then it would look really well-rounded. I just feel like if you get a Ryan O'Reilly and put it, all of a sudden that scale is leaning too hard to towards the front end, and our front end is solid, man. And as long as they're playing a little bit of D, there's so much scoring and offense up there, and we don't need to have that many premier studs. I would like to round it out a little bit more on the back end. That's probably wishful thinking, but I am agreeing there that the back end is where we need to add something. If not, leave it alone.
Would it ever weigh in the back of your head that the Leafs, the thing that's become unglued the last couple of years in the postseason has been the offense, not the defense? Like, you need that extra goal and they haven't been able to get it. So like, I understand the logical thinking. Let's get another guy who can score to maybe get that big goal for us.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I'm not going to put enough stock into that as to saying, well, that's going to happen again this year. Like, to me, that's just bad timing, bad luck. You have got so many guys. I mean, if you need a big goal and you can't get it out of Marner, Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, and then the supporting cast around them, well, then that's not the fault of, yeah, okay, maybe. It'd be nice to get that secondary going in the playoffs, but I think that's an anomaly. And yeah, is that crazy that happened last year? Yeah, but in the playoffs, man, it just doesn't matter. You don't neglect defense or goaltending. That's what seems to get it done every single year.
By the way, no confirmation on the goaltenders, so you'll have to stay tuned and locked to social media and Twitter throughout the day for the starting goals and that one. Don't forget, they're coming back from the holiday break, so guys are rushing in from the holidays. But it is the Blues, it's the Toronto Maple Leafs, and looking forward to this one. I think you're accurate. I would likely go after a defenseman too in the long haul. I just think you can't have enough depth in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Guys go down like flies. They're blocking shots, and I think you take your chances, you take your risk with what you have. But I think in a perfect world, Ryan O'Reilly, come on down. But Rosie, we'll leave it at that. A programming note again this week. Just we're doing 2 shows this week, so today's and then Thursdays. So you know what's happening on Thursday, right?
No, what?
Coyotes puck line, my dude. Back fucking at it. They're going to the frat house, Mullet Arena, the Leafs in Arizona, and you fucking know right now they're losing that game. So looking forward to talking about that one on Thursday. I'm taking the puck line, man. I'm all over it. I don't care. I don't care if this team's riled off like 39 of 41 or whatever it is. I'm going to Arizona on Thursday, man.
You're going with experience, apparently.
Yeah. I'm going with the torment and the PTSD of October. Anyways, Rosie, great stuff. We'll talk on Thursday, okay?
Right on, man. Talk to you then.